Oh, that sounds like you did have a good birthday, Kate B. Yep, absolutely. Happy birthday for last weekend. And yeah, that sounds like a good time. It doesn't sound lame at all. It sounds good. Right, a bit of an experiment this evening. I should be simulcasting to YouTube. However, I am not pushing that stream, but if it's going up to both, then I will be happy about this, because it will mean that I can look at both, at either or Twitch or YouTube, because Twitch have relaxed their rules on simulcasting if you're an affiliate, so I thought I may as well use that. So if anyone follows me on YouTube, it's entirely possible you might get pinged for that. But I'm not there. The only thing actually I'm thinking is I probably ought to put that into chat. There we go. Let's bung that in there. Yes, the only... Cool. Thank you, Hiram. The only thing you're allowed to do, you're not allowed to do, rather, is you're not allowed to link to your live YouTube in chat on Twitch, and the only chat that goes up on the stream has to be the Twitch one, which is fine, because that's the one I mirror onto my screen, so I'm not worried about that. And I would imagine that no, they're not going up exactly synced. But that's a problem for once it's actually working. And if it is, I will be happy about it, because this is a freebie simulcasting plugin, as opposed to the one which wanted to charge me $20 a month. And that's if I paid upfront nearly $200. The phrase "hell with that" springs to mind. Especially since I'm just testing. Okay, so we are in Baskerville territory. She says, just realising that she hasn't taken the phenylalanine, and therefore things are going to go pear-shaped. Kim. Oh, never mix your capsules for your supplement capsules just because it saves jar space. Ugh. Yeah, exactly, Kate B. I have no problem with one-off purchases. No worries with that at all. I hate, loathe and despise subscriptions. This is one of the reasons Fantasy Grounds appeals to me way more than something like the Foundry. Because they have the one-off license. Which I'm perfectly happy about. Oh, you can subscribe as well. Or sorry, instead. But you don't have to. You can just buy a one-off. Right. Okay. I love this book club tit. Not book club title. Book club tit. Let's expand that out, because what? So I hope that the audio is... Yeah, the choice is there. See also, actually, Serif Affinity as opposed to the sheer horror that is Adobe's subscription services. Sound is good? Okay, we will begin then. So, official start for edit. Welcome to Druttercup's book club. We are on The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And we are on chapter 12, Death on the Moor. Watson has tracked down the mystery man he spotted on the moor at night while they were chasing the convict Selden. And he has run him to ground in one of the ruined Neolithic houses. And now he would like a chat. So, here we jolly well go. For a moment or two I sat breathless, hardly able to believe my ears. Then my senses and my voice came back to me, while a crushing weight of responsibility seemed in an instant to be lifted from my soul. That cold, incisive, ironical voice could belong to but one man in all the world. "Holmes!" I cried. "Holmes!" "Come out," said he, "and please be careful with the revolver." I stooped under the rude lintel, and there he sat upon the stone outside, his grey eyes dancing with amusement as they fell upon my astonished features. He was thin and worn, but clear and alert, his keen face bronzed by the sun and roughened by the wind. In his tweed suit and cloth cap he looked like any other tourist upon the moor, and he had contrived, with that cat-like love of personal cleanliness which was one of his characteristics, that his chin should be as smooth and his linen as perfect as if he were in Baker Street. "I was never more glad to see anyone in my life," said I, as I wrung him by the hand. "Or more astonished, eh?" "Well, I must confess to it." "The surprise was not all on one side, I assure you. I had no idea that you had found my occasional retreat, still less that you were inside it, until I was within 20 paces of the door." "My footprint, I presume?" "No, Watson, I fear that I could not undertake you to recognise your footprint amid all the footprints in the world. If you seriously desire to deceive me, you must change your tobacconist, for when I see the stub of a cigarette marked Bradley, Oxford Street, I know that my friend Watson is in the neighbourhood. You will see it there beside the path. You threw it down, no doubt, at that supreme moment when you charged into the empty hut." "Exactly. I thought as much. And knowing your admirable tenacity, I was convinced that you were sitting in ambush, a weapon within reach, waiting for the tenant to return. So you actually thought that I was the criminal?" "I did not know who you were, but I was determined to find out." "Excellent, Watson. And how did you localise me? You saw me perhaps on the night of the convict hunt, when I was so imprudent as to allow the moon to rise behind me." "Yes, I saw you then." "And have no doubt searched all the huts until you came to this one." "No, your boy had been observed, and that gave me a guide where to look." "The old gentleman with the telescope, no doubt. I could not make it out when first I saw the light flashing upon the lens." He rose and peeped into the hut. "Ha! I see that Cartwright has brought up some supplies. What's this paper? So you've been to Coombe Tracy, have you?" "Yes." "To see Mrs. Laura Lyons?" "Exactly." "Well done. Our researches have evidently been running on parallel lines, and when we reunite our results, I expect we shall have a fairly full knowledge of the case." "Indeed, Niblick, because Watson is the only customer of that tobacconist." Maybe they're like that hair dye company that claims to make unique shades for all their customers. There is a unique blend for every single person who buys from this tobacconist. You never know. It's either that or he's the only one who buys cigarettes from them and everybody else buys cigars. I have to say, a tobacconist is a weird place because I love the smell of tobacco. Always have. Can't stand smoking. You'd like to think it has more to do with location. Yeah. That would make sense. It's It's going to be a rare person who wanders around on the moor who has their cigarettes shipped from London. You'd have to be extremely rich and be into that specific brand of cigarette. On the other hand, there is at least one story where a character has a point of having imported Egyptian tobacco, if I recall correctly. Okay, hang on. Well, I'm glad from my heart that you're here, for indeed the responsibility and the mystery were both becoming too much for my nerves. But how in the name of wonder did you come here, and what have you been doing? I thought you were in Baker Street working out that case of blackmailing. That was what I wished you to think. Then you use me and yet do not trust me, I cried with some bitterness. I think that I have deserved better at your hands, Holmes. My dear fellow, you have been invaluable to me in this as in many other cases, and I beg that you will forgive me if I have seemed to have played a trick on you. In truth, it was partly for your own sake that I did it, and it was my appreciation of the danger which you ran which led me to come down and examine the matter for myself. Had I been with Sir Henry and you, it was confident that my point of view would have been the same as yours, and my presence would have warned our very formidable opponents to be on their guard. As it is, I have been able to get about as I could not possibly have done had I been living in the hall, and I remain an unknown factor in the business, ready to throw in all my weight at a critical moment. Oh, thank you, Villacatson. Much appreciated, and I'm glad you have time for book club again. I'm glad actually for all of you who've stuck around since I've launched my book club. It's become uncommonly popular, I suppose. Geiger, you're out of date. You're not wearing a Santa hat. Spot the people who have not yet updated the speech. But why keep me in the dark? For you to know could not have helped us, and might possibly have led to my discovery. You would have wished to tell me something, or in your kindness you would have brought me out some comfort or other, and so an unnecessary risk would be run. I brought Cartwright down with me. You remember the little chap at the express office? And he has seen after my simple wants. A loaf of bread and a clean collar. What does a man want more? He has given me an extra pair of eyes upon a very active pair of feet, and both have been invaluable. Indeed, Watson is very brave, but he is not the best at keeping secrets. Several times Holmes keeps him in the dark because he has a very strong natural sincerity. He doesn't dissemble particularly well. Then my reports have all been wasted. My voice trembled as I recalled the pains and pride with which I had composed them. Holmes took a bundle of papers from his pocket. Here are your reports, my dear fellow, and very well thumbed, I assure you. I made excellent arrangements, and they are only delayed 1 day upon their way. I must compliment you exceedingly upon the zeal and the intelligence which you have shown over an extraordinarily difficult case. I was still rather raw over the deception which had been practised upon me, but the warmth of Holmes's praise drove my anger from my mind. I felt also in my heart that he was right in what he had said, and that it was really best for our purpose that I should not have known that he was upon the moor. That's better, said he, seeing the shadow rise from my face. And now tell me the result of your visit to Mrs. Laura Lyons. It was not difficult for me to guess that it was to see her that you had gone, for I am already aware that she is the one person in Coombe Tracey who might be of service to us in the matter. In fact, if you had not gone today, it is exceedingly probable that I should have gone tomorrow. The sun had set, and dusk was settling over the moor. The air had turned chill, and we withdrew into the hut for warmth. There, sitting together in the twilight, I told Holmes of my conversation with the lady. So interested was he that I had to repeat some of it twice before he was satisfied. "This is most important," said he when I had concluded. "It fills up a gap which I have been unable to bridge in this most complex affair. You are aware, perhaps, that a close intimacy exists between this lady and the man Stapleton." I did not know of a close intimacy. There can be no doubt about the matter. They meet, they write, there is a complete understanding between them. Now, this puts a very powerful weapon into our hands. If I could only use it to detach his wife. His wife? I am giving you some information now in return for all that you've given me. The lady who has passed here as Miss Stapleton is in reality his wife. Good heavens, Holmes, are you sure of what you say? How could he have permitted Sir Henry to fall in love with her? Sir Henry's falling in love could do no harm to anyone except Sir Henry. He took particular care that Sir Henry did not make love to her, as you have yourself observed. I repeat that the lady is his wife, and not his sister. Making love as in romancing her, not making love as in way hey. But why this elaborate deception? Because he foresaw that she would be very much more useful to him in the character of a free woman. Yes. When you said Crimson Peak, yeah. You were bang on, and I didn't want to confirm that. All my unspoken instincts, my vague suspicions, suddenly took shape and centred upon the naturalist. In that impassive, colourless man with his straw hat and his butterfly net, I seemed to see something terrible, a creature of infinite patience and craft, with a smiling face and a murderous heart. Yeah, they are very different, yeah. And while that can happen, it's not it's not necessarily a common thing. Sorry, excuse me one moment. I have a cold in my nose. Oh dear. Okay, was expecting to sneeze. Nope. It is he, then, who is our enemy. It is he who dogged us in London. So I read the riddle. And the warning? It must have come from her. Exactly. Yes, she has a slight Spanish accent. It's described as a lisp, but that if somebody speaks fluent English but has a Castilian Spanish first language, or has Castilian Spanish as their first language, there is a tendency to smooth out S's. It's one of the ways I managed to fake up an Andalusian accent when I'm out in Spain. Not fake up, adopt. I realised I had, because I was mimicking the speech patterns of those around me. And that slides over some of the harsher S's. The past was wild. It was so easy just to rock up to a place and straight up lie to everyone and never be found out. Much harder to do these days. Absolutely. It's like walking into a job. You know, you used to be able to do that without any difficulty whatsoever, theoretically. You can just pitch up if an advert goes up, bring the card in and say, hello, yes, I would like to do work, please. Here's my CV, if you're being that organised. And these days, of course, no. Many ID checks. Something the generation, a couple before mine, really haven't figured out yet. Hence you get the granny and granddad, or great granny and great granddad, doing the, well, why don't you just go into all the places you want to work and give them your CV? Not a good idea, guys. Okay. The shape of some monstrous villainy, half seen, half guessed, loomed through the darkness which had girt me so long. But are you sure of this, Holmes? How do you know that the woman is his wife? because he so far forgot himself as to tell you a true piece of autobiography upon the occasion when he first met you, and I dare say he has many a time regretted it since. He was once a schoolmaster in the north of England. Now, there is no one more easy to trace than a schoolmaster. There are scholastic agencies by which one may identify any man who has been in the profession. A little investigation showed me that a school had come to grief under atrocious circumstances, and that the man who had owned it, the name was different, had disappeared with his wife. Yeah, the CV goes in the bin, and they'll say apply on the website. Yeah. When I worked in retail, even though you could theoretically apply in person, it had to be on the right form. They didn't want your CV, and they would only accept them if it was actually on the A-frame billboard outside that there were jobs going. And towards the end, even that they stopped doing. I felt so sorry for some people who had clearly been sent out by their parents to do the "here's my CV, please can I have a job," and we had to destroy them, we had to shred them because data protection. And I always tried to have a word with said parents, who were usually lurking, and explain that they needed to apply through the specific report channels, otherwise they weren't going to get anywhere. We were just wasting paper and ink. Sherlock Holmes would have loved Facebook. Yes! People tell on themselves on social media. It's like the police campaign over here, brag when back. Basically, don't shout about being on holiday when you're on holiday, because you may as well put up a nice big sign saying, "I am not at home. Please burgle me as much as you wish." Right. Hey, Lexi. We've just had the revelation that the naturalist Stapleton, Captain Butterfly Catcher and Pony Drowner, is in fact married to the woman who is passing as his sister. And is probably the villain of the piece. Yeah, Niblick, yeah, that was pretty much where I was on that. A teenager, still just about in the era of going in and picking up an application form. I think the last time where I used to work accepted that was, God, must be 10 years ago now. And then only for seasonal work, only for Christmas. Otherwise, you had to go either through the job centre or you had to go through their website. Where are we? Had disappeared with his wife. The descriptions agreed. When I learned that the missing man was devoted to entomology, the identification was complete. The darkness was rising, but much was still hidden by the shadows. Oh, there's a statement. If this woman is in truth his wife, where does Mrs. Laura Lyons come in? I asked. That's one of the points upon which your own researches have shed a light. Your interview with the lady has cleared the situation very much. I did not know about a projected divorce between herself and her husband. In that case, regarding Stapleton as an unmarried man, she counted no doubt upon becoming his wife. And when she is undeceived? Why then we may find the lady of service. It must be our first duty to see her, both of us, tomorrow. Don't you think, Watson, that you are away from your charge rather long? Your place should be at Baskerville Hall. The last red streaks had faded away in the west, and night had settled upon the moor. A few faint stars were gleaming in a violet sky. "One last question, Holmes," I said as I rose. "Surely there's no need of secrecy between you and me. What's the meaning of it all? What's he after?" Holmes' voice sank as he answered, "It's murder, Watson. Refined, cold-blooded, deliberate murder. Do not ask me for particulars. My nets are closing upon him, even as his are upon Sir Henry, and with your help he is already almost at my mercy. There is but one danger which can threaten us. It is that he should strike before we're ready to do so. Another day, 2 at the most, and I have my case complete. But until then, guard your charge as closely as ever a fond mother watched her ailing child. Your mission today has justified itself, and yet I could almost wish that you had not left his side. Hark! A terrible scream, a prolonged yell of horror and anguish burst out of the silence of the moor. That frightful cry turned the blood to ice in my veins. "Oh, my God," I gasped. "What is it? What does it mean?" Holmes had sprung to his feet, and I saw his dark, athletic outline at the door of the hut, his shoulders stooping, his head thrust forward, his face peering into the darkness. "Hush!" he whispered. "Hush!" The cry had been loud on account of its vehemence, but it had pealed out from somewhere far off on the shadowy plain. Now it burst upon our ears, nearer, louder, more urgent than before. "Where is it?" Holmes whispered, and I knew from the thrill of his voice that he, the man of iron, was shaken to the soul. "Where is it, Watson?" "There, I think." I pointed into the darkness. "No, there." Again the agonized cry swept through the silent night, louder and much nearer than ever, and a new sound was mingled with it, a deep muttered rumble, musical and yet menacing, rising and falling like the low, constant murmur of the sea. "The hound!" cried Holmes. "Come, Watson, come! Great heavens, if we're too late!" He started running swiftly over the moor, and I had followed at his heels. But now from somewhere among the broken ground immediately in front of us there came one last despairing yell, and then a dull, heavy thud. We halted and listened. Not another sound broke the heavy silence of the windless night. I saw Holmes put his hand to his forehead like a man distracted. He stamped his feet upon the ground. "He has beaten us, Watson. We are too late." "No, surely not." Fool that I was to hold my hand. And you, Watson, see what becomes of abandoning your charge. But by heaven, if the worst has happened, we'll avenge him. Blindly we ran through the gloom, blundering against boulders, forcing our way through gorse bushes, panting up hills and rushing down slopes, heading always in the direction whence those dreadful sounds had come. At every rise Holmes looked eagerly round him, but the shadows were thick upon the moor, and nothing moved upon its dreary face. "Can you see anything?" "Nothing." "But hark, what is that?" A low moan had fallen upon our ears. There it was again upon our left. On that side a ridge of rocks ended in a sheer cliff which overlooked a stone-strewn slope. On its jagged face was spread-eagled some dark irregular object. As we ran towards it, the vague outline hardened into a definite shape. It was a prostrate man, face downwards upon the ground, the head doubled up underneath him at a horrible angle, the shoulders rounded and the body hunched together, as if in the act of throwing a somersault. So grotesque was the attitude that I could not for the instant realize that the moan had been the passing of his soul. Not a whisper, not a rustle rose now from the dark figure over which we had stooped. Holmes laid his hand upon him and held it up again with an exclamation of horror. The gleam of the match which he struck shone upon his clotted fingers and upon the ghastly pool which widened slowly from the crushed skull of the victim. And it shone upon something else which turned our hearts sick and faint within us, the body of Sir Henry Baskerville. There was no chance of either of us forgetting that peculiar ruddy tweed suit, the very one which he had worn in the first morning we had seen him in Baker Street. We caught one clear glimpse of it, and then the match flickered and went out, even as the hope had gone out of our souls. Holmes groaned, and his face glimmered white through the darkness. "The brute! The brute!" I cried with clenched hands. "Oh, Holmes, I should never forgive myself for having left him to his fate." "I am more to blame than you, Watson. In order to have my case well rounded and complete, I have thrown away the life of my client. It is the greatest blow which has befallen me in my career. But how could I know that he would risk his life alone upon the moor in the face of all my warnings?" Gasp indeed, Chrono. Excuse me. I'd just like to point out, as far as I can tell, by the way, Twitch is behaving itself today. Dun 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 dun. Cool. That we should have heard his screams, my God, those screams, and yet have been unable to save him. Where is this brute of a hound which drove him to his death? It may be lurking among these rocks at this instant. And Stapleton, where is he? He shall answer for this deed. He shall. I will see to that. Uncle and nephew have been murdered, the one frightened to death by the very sight of a beast which he thought to be supernatural, and the other driven to his end in his wild flight to escape from it. But now we have to prove the connection between the man and the beast. Save from what we've heard, we cannot even swear to the existence of the latter, since Sir Henry has evidently died from the fall. But by heavens, cunning as he is, the fellow shall be in my power before another day is past. We stood with bitter hearts on either side of the mangled body, overwhelmed by this sudden and irrevocable disaster which had brought all our long and weary labours to so piteous an end. Then, as the moon rose, we climbed to the top of the rocks over which our poor friend had fallen, and from the summit we gazed out over the shadowy moor, half silver and half gloom. Far away, miles off in the direction of Grimpen, a single steady yellow light was shining. It could only come from the lonely abode of the Stapletons. With a bitter curse I shook my fist at it as I gazed. Why should we not seize him at once? Our case is not complete. The fellow is wary and cunning to the last degree. It is not what we know, but what we can prove. If we make one false move, the villain may escape us yet. What can we do? There will be plenty for us to do tomorrow. Tonight we can only perform the last of offices to our poor friend. Together we made our way down the precipitous slope and approached the body, black and clear against the silvered stones. The agony of those contorted limbs struck me with a spasm of pain and blurred my eyes with tears. We must send for help, Holmes. We cannot carry him all the way to the hall. Good heavens, you mad? He had uttered a cry and bent over the body. Now he was dancing and laughing and wringing my hands. Could this be my stern, self-contained friend? These were hidden fires indeed. A beard! A beard! The man has a beard! A beard? It is not the baronet. It is... Why, it's my neighbour, the convict. With feverish haste we had turned the body over, and that dripping beard was pointing up to the cold, clear moon. There could be no doubt about the beetling forehead, the sunken animal eyes. It was indeed the same face which had glared upon me in the light of the candle from over the rock, the face of Selden the criminal. And then, in an instant, it was all clear to me. I remembered how the baronet had told me that he had handed his old wardrobe to Barrymore. Barrymore had passed it on in order to help Selden in his escape. Boots, shirt, cap, it was all Sir Henry's. The tragedy was still black enough, but this man had at least deserved death by the laws of his country. I told Holmes how the matter stood, my heart bubbling over with thankfulness and joy. Then the clothes have been the poor devil's death, said he. It is clear enough that the hound has been laid on from some article of Sir Henry's, the boot which was abstracted in the hotel in all probability, and so ran this man down. There is one very singular thing, however. How came Selden in the darkness to know that the hound was on his trail? Yeah, that is slightly callous of Watson. But Selden is a multiple murderer, so... I can kind of see his point. Personally, I am, of course, totally anti-death penalty, so yeah. Hence, I put in my content warnings, we have era-appropriate opinions. But at least he does still consider it a shame. I don't think he's happy to see anyone die, to be honest. Because if nothing else, of course, he and Sir Henry were perfectly happy to let the Barrymores get Selden out of the country. You know, they weren't turning him into the prison. Getting him away from where he could hurt anyone was the priority, rather than recapturing him and inflicting the official punishment. Yeah, I think it is mostly relief at Sir Henry not being dead. How came Selden in the darkness to know that the hound was on his trail? He heard him? To hear a hound upon the moor would not work a hard man like this convict into such a paroxysm of terror that he would risk a recapture by screaming wildly for help. By his cries he must have run a long way after he knew the animal was on his track. How did he know? A greater mystery to me is why this hound, presuming that all our conjectures are correct, I presume nothing. Well then, why this hound should be loose tonight? I suppose that it does not always run loose upon the moor. Stapleton would not let it go unless he had reason to think Sir Henry would be there. My difficulty is the more formidable of the two, for I think that we shall very shortly get an explanation of yours, while mine may remain for ever a mystery. The question now is, what shall we do with this poor wretch's body? We cannot leave it here to the foxes and the ravens. I suggest that we put it in one of the huts until we can communicate with the police. Exactly. I have no doubt that you and I can carry it so far. Hello, Watson, what's this? It's the man himself, by all that's wonderful and audacious. Not a word to show your suspicions. Not a word, or my plans crumble to the ground. A figure was approaching us over the moor, and I saw the dull red glow of a cigar. The moon shone upon him, and I could distinguish the dapper shape and jaunty walk of the naturalist. He stopped when he saw us, and then came on again. Why, Dr. Watson, that's not you, is it? You're the last man that I should have expected to see out on the moor in this time of night. But dear me, what's this? Someone hurt? No, don't tell me it is our friend Sir Henry. He hurried past me and stooped over the dead man. I heard a sharp intake of his breath, and the cigar fell from his fingers. Who's this? He stammered. It is Selden, the man who escaped from Princeton. Stapleton turned a ghastly face upon us, but by a supreme effort he had overcome his amazement and his disappointment. He looked sharply from Holmes to me. Dear me, what a very shocking affair! How did he die? He appears to have broken his neck by falling over these rocks. My friend and I were strolling on the moor when we heard a cry. How would Stapleton know about Sir Henry's old suit? Sir Henry was wearing it when he arrived, and it may well have come up. I don't think it's explicitly defined, but it's also a very American style. It's mentioned early on. It's not an English style. You say boot thief. Yeah. The boots would have been taken, the two boots that went missing would have been taken from outside Sir Henry's room. And, of course, he saw Sir Henry when he was following him in London. Because he didn't get his new wardrobe until... Oh, yeah. No, I think we can safely say that he's jumping to his, oh no, gosh, oh dear, how terrible, way too quickly. And he's just expecting everybody to believe him because he doesn't realise that they're onto him. Boot thief and stalker, yes. I heard a cry also. That's what brought me out. I was uneasy about Sir Henry. Why about Sir Henry in particular? I couldn't help asking. Because I had suggested that he should come over. When he did not come, I was surprised, and I naturally became alarmed for his safety when I heard cries upon the moor. By the way, his eyes darted again from my face to Holmes's. Did you hear anything else beside a cry? No, said Holmes. Did you? No. What do you mean, then? Oh, you know, the stories that the peasants tell about a phantom hound and so on. It is said to be heard at night upon the moor. I was wondering if there were any evidence of such a sound tonight. We heard nothing of the kind, said I. And what is your theory of this poor fellow's death? I have no doubt that anxiety and exposure have driven him off his head. He was rushed about the moor in a crazy state and eventually fallen over here and broken his neck. Yeah, Stapleton is absolutely fixated on Sir Henry. That seems the most reasonable theory, said Stapleton, and he gave a sigh which I took to indicate his relief. What do you think about it, Mr. Sherlock Holmes? My friend bowed his compliments. You are quick at identification, said he. We have been expecting you in these parts since Dr. Watson came down. You are in time to see a tragedy. Yes, indeed. I have no doubt that my friend's explanation will cover the facts. I will take an unpleasant remembrance back to London with me tomorrow. Oh, you return tomorrow? That is my intention. I hope your visit has cast some light upon these occurrences which have puzzled us. Holmes shrugged his shoulders. One cannot always have the success for which one hopes. An investigator needs facts and not legends or rumours. It has not been a satisfactory case. My friend spoke in his frankest and most unconcerned manner. Stapleton still looked hard at him, and then turned to me. I would suggest carrying this poor fellow to my house, but it would give my sister such a fright that I do not feel justified in doing it. I think if we put something over his face, he will be safe until morning. And so it was arranged. Resisting Stapleton's offer of hospitality, Holmes and I set off to Baskerville Hall, leaving the naturalist to return alone. Looking back, we saw the figure moving slowly away over the broad moor, and behind him that one black smudge on the silvered slope which showed where the man was lying who had come so horribly to his end. Okay, we have decision. And I will just sort this out. We have a decision to make. We're on chapter 13. Let's see how many chapters we have left. So I can either finish it here and we do the last 3 chapters next week, or I do the next chapter and we do the last chapter and epilogue next week. Which would people prefer? I'm not doing a game stream this evening because I look frankly a wreck because I've had a cold. So I will leave it up to you guys to decide. Which would you prefer? Another chapter or hold off and do it next week? You go for another chapter today? No, I'm fine with it. I am fine with it. So the clicking back and forth was just to check how many pages I was on. That's the only real problem with it being a combined volume, the complete adventures in one book. Because of course it shows you your progress through the whole book. Okay, so people are good with that. That's fine by me. Chapter 13, Fixing the Nets. We're at close grips at last, said Holmes as we walked together across the moor. What a nerve the fellow has. How he pulled himself together in the face of what must have been a paralysing shock when he found that the wrong man had fallen a victim to his plot. I told you in Watson, and I tell you now again, that we have never had a foeman more worthy of our steel. I am sorry that he has seen you. And so was I at first, but there was no getting out of it. What effect do you think it will have upon his plans now that he knows you're here? It may cause him to be more cautious, or it may drive him to desperate measures at once. Like most clever criminals, he may be too confident in his own cleverness, and imagine that he has completely deceived us. Why should we not arrest him at once? My dear Watson, you were born to be a man of action. Watson Defence Squad, assemble. Sorry. Watson, the man of action. Not the bumbling idiot. Okay, yeah, I know. I'm one note. I apologise. My dear Watson, you were born to be a man of action. Your instinct is always to do something energetic. But supposing, for argument's sake, that we had him arrested tonight, what on earth the better off should we be for that? We could prove nothing against him, and then there's the devilish cunning of it. If he were acting through a human agent, we could get some evidence, but if we were to drag this great dog to the light of day, it would not help us in putting a rope around the neck of his master. Surely we have a case. Not a shadow of one, only surmise and conjecture. We should be laughed out of court if we came with such a story and such evidence. There is Sir Charles's death. Found without a mark upon him. You and I know that he died of sheer fright, and we also know what frightened him. But how are we to get 12 stolid jurymen to know it? What signs are there of a hound? Where are the marks of its fangs? Of course we know that a hound does not bite a dead body, and Sir Charles was dead before ever the brute overtook him. But we have to prove all this, and we're not in a position to do it. He is a man of action, but he does have to wait for evidence. Yes, absolutely. Well then, tonight, we're not much better off tonight. Again, there was no direct connection between the hound and the man's death. We never saw the hound. We heard it, but we could not prove that it was running upon this man's trail. There is a complete absence of motive. No, my dear fellow, we must reconcile ourselves to the fact that we have no case at present, and that it is worth our while to run any risk in order to establish one. And how do you propose to do so? I have great hopes of what Mrs. Laura Lyons may do for us when the position of affairs is made clear to her. And I have my own plan as well. Sufficient for tomorrow is the evil thereof, but I hope before the day is past to have the upper hand at last. I could draw nothing further from him, and he walked lost in thought as far as the Baskerville gates. Are you coming up? Yes, I see no reason for further concealment. But one last word, Sir Henry. Say nothing of the hound to Sir Henry. One last thing, Watson. Say nothing of the hound to Sir Henry. Let him think that Selden's death was as Stapleton would have us believe. He will have a better nerve for the ordeal which he will have to undergo tomorrow, when he is engaged, if I remember your report aright, to dine with these people. And so am I. Then you must excuse yourself, and he must go alone. That will be easily arranged. And now, if we're too late for dinner, I think we are both ready for our suppers. Sir Henry was more pleased than surprised to see Sherlock Holmes, for he had for some days been expecting that recent events would bring him down from London. He did raise his eyebrows, however, when he found that my friend had neither luggage nor any explanation for its absence. Between us, we soon supplied his wants, and then over a belated supper we explained to the baronet as much of our experience as it seemed desirable that he should know. But first I had the unpleasant duty of breaking the news to Barrymore and his wife. To him it may have been an unmitigated relief, but she wept bitterly in her apron. To all the world he was the man of violence, half animal, half demon. But to her he always remained the little wilful boy of her own girlhood, the child who had clung to her hand. Evil indeed is the man who has not one woman to mourn him. "I've been moping in the house all day since Watson went off in the morning," said the baronet. "I guess I should have some credit, for I've kept my promise. If I hadn't sworn not to go about alone, I might have had a more lively evening, for I had a message from Stapleton asking me over there." "I have no doubt that you would have had a more lively evening," said Holmes dryly. "By the way, I don't suppose you appreciate that we have been mourning over you as having broken your neck." Sir Henry opened his eyes. "How was that?" "This poor wretch was dressed in your clothes. I fear your servant who gave them to him may get into some trouble with the police." "That's unlikely. There was no mark on any of them, as far as I know." "That's lucky for him. In fact, it's lucky for all of you, since you're all on the wrong side of the law in this matter. I'm not sure that as a conscientious detective my first duty is not to arrest the whole household. Watson's reports are most incriminating documents." "But how about the case?" asked the baronet. "Have you made anything out of the tangle? I don't know that Watson and I are much the wiser since we came down." "I think that I shall be in a position to make the situation rather more clear to you before long. It has been an exceedingly difficult and most complicated business. There are several points upon which we still want light, but it is coming all the same. We've had one experience, as Watson's no doubt told you. We heard the hound on the moor, so I can swear that it was not all empty superstition. I had something to do with dogs when I was out west, and I know one when I hear one. If you can muzzle that one and put him on a chain, I'll be ready to swear you're the greatest detective of all time. I think I will muzzle him and chain him all right if you'll give me your help. Whatever you tell me to do, I will do. Very good. And I will ask you also to do it blindly, without always asking the reason. Just as you like. If you will do this, I think the chances are that our little problem will soon be solved. I have no doubt. He stopped suddenly and stared fixedly up over my head into the air. The lamp beat upon his face, and so intent was it, and so still, that it might have been that of a clear-cut classical statue, a personification of alertness and expectation. "What is it?" we both cried. I could see as he looked down that he was repressing some internal emotion. His features were still composed, but his eyes shone with amused exultation. "Excuse the admiration of a connoisseur," said he, as he waved his hand towards the line of portraits which covered the opposite wall. "Watson won't allow that I know anything of art, but that is mere jealousy because our views upon the subject differ. Now these are really a very fine series of portraits." "Well, I'm glad to hear you say so," said Sir Henry, glancing with some surprise at my friend. "I don't pretend to know much about these things, and I'd be a better judge of a horse or a steer than of a picture. I didn't know that you found some time for such things." "I know what is good when I see it, and I see it now. That's a Nella, I'll swear, that lady in the blue silk over yonder, and the stout gentleman with the wig ought to be a Reynolds. They're all family portraits, I presume?" "Every one." "Do you know the names?" "Barrymore has been coaching me in them, and I think I can say my lessons fairly well." "Who is the gentleman with the telescope?" "That is Rear Admiral Baskerville, who served under Rodney in the West Indies. The man with the blue coat and the roll of paper is Sir William Baskerville, who was chairman of committees of the House of Commons under Pitt." "And this cavalier opposite to me, the one with the black lace and the black velvet and the lace?" "Oh, you have a right to know about him. That is the cause of all the mischief, the wicked Hugo, who started the hound of the Baskervilles. We're not likely to forget him." I gazed with interest and some surprise upon the portrait. "Dear me," said Holmes. "He seems a quiet, meek-mannered man enough, but I dare say there was a lurking devil in his eyes. I had pictured him as a more robust and ruffianly person." "There's no doubt about the authenticity, for the name and the date, 1647, are on the back of the canvas." Holmes said little more, but the picture of the old roisterer seemed to have a fascination for him, and his eyes were continually fixed upon it during supper. It was not until later, when Sir Henry had gone to his room, that I was able to follow the trend of his thoughts. He led me back into the banqueting hall, his bedroom candle in his hand, and he held it up against the time-stained portrait on the wall. "Do you see anything there?" I looked at the broad-plumed hat, the curling love-locks, the white lace collar, and the straight, severe face which was framed between them. It was not a brutal countenance, but it was prim, hard, and stern, with a firm-set, thin-lipped mouth and a coldly intolerant eye. "Is it like anyone you know?" "There is something of Sir Henry about the jaw. Just a suggestion, perhaps, but wait an instant." He stood upon a chair, and holding up the light in his left hand, he curved his right arm over the broad hat and round the long ringlets. "Good heavens!" I cried in amazement. The face of Stapleton had sprung out of the canvas. "Ha! Now you see it. Or you see it now. My eyes have been trained to examine faces and not their trimmings. It's the first quality of a criminal investigator that he should see through a disguise." "But this is marvellous. It might be his portrait." "Yes, it is an interesting instance of a throwback, which appears to be both physical and spiritual. A study of family portraits is enough to convert a man to the doctrine of reincarnation. The fellow is a Baskerville, that is evident." "With designs upon the succession." "Exactly. This chance of the picture has supplied us with one of our most obvious missing links. We have him, Watson. We have him, and I dare swear that before tomorrow night he will be fluttering in our net as helpless as one of his own butterflies. A pin, a cork, and a card, and we add him to the Baker Street collection." He burst into one of his rare fits of laughter as he turned away from the picture. I have not heard him laugh often, and it has always boded ill to somebody. Dun, 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 dun. Mark 3. I was up betimes in the morning, but Holmes was afoot earlier still, for I saw him as I dressed coming up the drive. "Yes, we should have a full day today," he remarked, and rubbed his hands with the joy of action. "The nets are all in place, and the drag is about to begin. We'll know before the day is out whether we have caught our big lean-jawed pike, or whether he has got through the meshes." "Have you been on the moor already?" "I have sent a report from Grimpen to Princeton as to the death of Selden. I think I can promise that none of you will be troubled with the matter. And I have also communicated with my faithful Cartwright, who would certainly have pined away at the door of my hut as a dog does at his master's grave, if I had not set his mind at rest about my safety." "What's the next move?" "To see Sir Henry. Here he is." "Good morning, Holmes," said the baronet. "You look like a general who's planning a battle with his chief of staff." "That is the exact situation. Watson was asking for orders." "And so do I." "Very good. You're engaged, as I understand, to dine with our friends the Stapletons tonight." "I hope that you will come also. They are very hospitable people, and I am sure that they would be very glad to see you." "I fear that Watson and I must go to London." "To London?" "Yes, I think that we should be more useful there at the present juncture." The baronet's face perceptibly lengthened. "I hoped you were going to see me through this business. The hall and the moor are not very pleasant places when one's alone." "My dear fellow, you must trust me implicitly and do exactly what I tell you. You can tell your friends that we should have been happy to have come with you, but that urgent business requires us to be in town. We hope very soon to return to Devonshire. Will you remember to give them that message?" "If you insist upon it." "There is no alternative, I assure you." I saw by the baronet's clouded brow that he was deeply hurt by what he regarded as our desertion. "When do you desire to go?" he asked coldly. "Immediately after breakfast. We will drive into Coombe Tracey, but Watson will leave his things as a pledge that he will come back to you. Watson, you will send a note to Stapleton to tell him that you regret you cannot come." "I've a good mind to go to London with you," said the baronet. "Why should I stay here alone?" "Because it is your post of duty, because you gave me your word that you would do as you were told, and I tell you to stay." "All right, then, I'll stay." "One more direction. I wish you to drive to Merripit House. Send back your trap, however, and let them know that you intend to walk home." "To walk across the moor?" "Yes." "But that is the very thing which you've so often cautioned me not to do." "This time you may do it with safety. If I have not every confidence in your nerve and courage, I would not suggest it, but it is essential that you should do it." "Then I'll do it." "And as you value your life, do not go across the moor in any direction save along the straight path which leads from Merripit House to the Grimpen Road, and is your natural way home." "I will do just what you say." "Very good. I should be glad to get away as soon as after breakfast as possible, so as to reach London in the afternoon." I was much astounded by this programme, though I remembered that Holmes had said to Stapleton on the night before that his visit would terminate next day. It had not crossed my mind, however, that he would wish me to go with him, nor could I understand how we could both be absent at a moment which he himself declared to be critical. There was nothing for it, however, but implicit obedience, so we bade good-bye to our rueful friend, and a couple of hours afterwards we were at the station of Coombe Tracey, and had dispatched the trap upon its return journey. A small boy was waiting upon the platform. "Any orders, sir?" "You will take this train to town, Cartwright. The moment you arrive, you will send a wire to Sir Henry Baskerville in my name, to say that if he finds the pocket-book which I have dropped, he is to send it by registered post to Baker Street." "Yes, sir." "And ask at the station office if there is a message for me." The boy returned with a telegram, which Holmes handed to me. It ran, "Wire received. Coming down with unsigned warrant. Arrive 5:40. Lestrade." That is in answer to mine of this morning. He is the best of the professionals, I think, and we may need his assistance. Now, Watson, I think that we cannot employ our time better than by calling upon your acquaintance, Mrs. Laura Lyons. Yeah, Holmes is very secretive by nature. I think it ties into the sense of dramatic. He does like whisking away the curtain at the end of a show, which, in at least one story, kind of is responsible for the death of his client. In truth, not just in the situation where he was with Sir Henry. He is indeed a drama llama. His plan of campaign was beginning to be evident. He would use the baronet in order to convince the Stapletons that we were really gone, while we should actually return at the instant when we were likely to be needed. That telegram from London, if mentioned by Sir Henry to the Stapletons, must remove the last suspicions from their minds. Already I seem to see our nets drawing closer around that lean-jawed pike. Well, we know that he is a consummate actor because he is huge on the disguises. But yes, it could be said that perhaps leaving it out of the detective work might be a plan. I can 100% agree with that. Also, the absolute need to get a case nailed down 100% without gaps before he closes it, which is very admirable, but has also got him into trouble. Especially if he's up against anyone with a functioning brainstem. Mrs. Laura Lyons was in her office, and Sherlock Holmes opened his interview with a frankness and directness which considerably amazed her. You don't cosplay to work or at the grocery store, time and place. Yeah. Yeah, I think dressing up, disguising himself as someone else is one of his first go-tos in information gathering. "I'm investigating the circumstances which attended the death of the late Sir Charles Baskerville," said he. "My friend here, Dr. Watson, has informed me of what you've communicated and also of what you've withheld in connection with that matter." "What have I withheld?" she asked defiantly. "You have confessed that you asked Sir Charles to be at the gate at 10 o'clock. We know that that was the place and hour of his death. You have withheld what the connection is between those events." "There is no connection." "In that case, the coincidence must indeed be an extraordinary one. But I think that we shall succeed in establishing a connection after all. I wish to be perfectly frank with you, Mrs. Lyons. We regard this case as one of murder, and the evidence may implicate not only your friend Stapleton, but his wife as well." The lady sprang from her chair. "His wife?" she cried. "The fact is no longer a secret. The person who has passed for his sister is really his wife." Mrs. Lyons had resumed her seat. Her hands were grasping the arms of her chair, and I saw that the pink nails had turned white with the pressure of her grip. "His wife," she said again. "His wife! He's not a married man." Sherlock Holmes shrugged his shoulders. "Prove it to me! Prove it to me! And if you can do so—" The fierce flash of her eyes said more than any words. Oh, I just feel that Holmes was such a member of the drama club at school. Absolutely. But yes, I suspect he was a terrible teenager. I suddenly feel a little bit sorry for Mycroft. "I have come prepared to do so," said Holmes, drawing several papers from his pocket. Here is a photograph of the couple taken in York 4 years ago. It's endorsed Mr. and Mrs. Vandeleur, but you will have no difficulty in recognizing him and her also if you know her by sight. Yeah. Stapleton has been having a full-blown affair in order to manipulate Laura Lyons into sending the messages to Sir Henry. But no, God forbid that the wife does. But you will have no... Here are 3 written test descriptions by trustworthy witnesses of Mr. and Mrs. Vandeleur, who at that time kept St. Oliver's private school. Read them and see if you can doubt the identity of these people. Mrs. Lyons has no luck with men whatsoever. But, yeah, she most definitely has a type. She glanced at them, and then looked up at us with the set, rigid face of a desperate woman. "Mr. Holmes," she said, "this man had offered me marriage on condition that I could get a divorce from my husband. He has lied to me, the villain, in every conceivable way. Not one word of truth has he ever told me. And why? I imagined that it was all for my own sake, but now I see that I was never anything but a tool in his hands. Why should I preserve faith with him, who never kept any with me? Why should I try to shield him from the consequences of his own wicked acts? Ask me what you like, and there is nothing which I shall hold back. One thing I swear to you, and that is what I wrote the letter in. When I wrote the letter, I never dreamed of any harm to the old gentleman, who has been my kindest friend." "I entirely believe you, madam," said Sherlock Holmes. "The recital of these events must be very painful to you, and perhaps it will make it easier if I tell you what occurred, and you can check me if I make any material mistake. The sending of this letter was suggested to you by Stapleton. He dictated it. I presume that the reason he gave was that you would receive help from Sir Charles for the legal expenses connected with your divorce." "Exactly." "And then after you sent the letter, he dissuaded you from keeping the appointment." "Laura, go be a typewriter girl in London. It isn't much, it's honest work, and you won't be dependent on the dude." Yeah. I mean, she has set herself up with a typewriting business in Devonshire. But yeah, she could probably do with getting away from both her father and the god-awful situation where everybody knows her. A fresh start in employment would do her a power of good. Then after you sent the letter, he dissuaded you from keeping the appointment. He told me that it was hurt his self-respect that any other man should find the money for such an object, and that though he was a poor man himself, he would devote his last penny to removing the obstacles which divided us. He appears to be a very consistent character. And then you heard nothing until you read the reports of the death on the paper. No. And he made you swear to say nothing about your appointment with Sir Charles. Just leave the country. No one even needs to know she's married. True. But if she ever made good of herself while still married, it's theoretically possible her husband could track her down and start demanding money with menaces. He made you swear to say nothing about your appointment with Sir Charles. He did. He said the death was a very mysterious one, and that I should certainly be suspected if the facts came out. He frightened me into remaining silent. Quite so, but you had your suspicions. She hesitated and looked down. I knew him, she said, but if he had kept faith with me, I should always have done so with him. I think that on the whole you have had a fortunate escape, said Sherlock Holmes. You have had him in your power, and he knew it, and yet you are alive. You have been walking for some months very near to the edge of a precipice. We must wish you good morning now, Mrs. Lyons, and it is probable that you will very shortly hear from us again. Yeah, exactly. Also, another Sherlock Holmes story, The Cornish Horror. One of the characters in that desperately wants to marry his one true love long term, but because he has a wife who abandoned him, he can't divorce her because he can't get hold of her. Our case becomes rounded off, and difficulty after difficulty thins away in front of us, said Holmes as we stood waiting for the arrival of the express from town. I shall soon be in the position of being able to put into a single connective narrative one of the most singular and sensational crimes of modern times. Students of criminology will remember the analogous incidences in Godno in Little Russia in the year 66, and of course there are the Anderson murders in North Carolina, but this case possesses some features which are entirely its own. Even now we have no clear case against this very wily man, but I shall be very much surprised if it is not clear enough before we go to bed this night. The London Express came roaring into the station, and a small, wiry bulldog of a man had sprung from the first-class carriage. We all three shook hands, and I saw at once from the reverential way in which Lestrade gazed at my companion that he had learned a good deal since the days when they had first worked together. I could well remember the scorn which the theories of the reasoner used to then excite in the practical man. "Anything good?" he asked. "The biggest thing for years," said Holmes. "We have 2 hours before we need think of starting. I think we might employ it in getting some dinner, and then, Lestrade, we will take the London fog out of your throat by giving you a breath of the pure night air of Dartmoor. Never been there? Oh, well, I don't suppose you will forget your first visit." And that's where we will leave it. Next chapter, The Hound of the Baskervilles. So, we will finish this up next week. And by then, hopefully, I will have decided what I would like to do next. We shall see. So, thank you very much. And I'm just going to confirm that the YouTube stream is still running. Yep, that seems perfectly happy. Okay. So, this multi-stream lark seems to be a go. We are happy with that. So, thank you very much indeed. I will be back on Thursday. Whether I'm back on Twitch or whether I'm back on YouTube will largely depend upon whether Twitch is being a cowbag again, which it was last Thursday. But now at least I've got the option of shooting it up to YouTube as well. So if it does go pear-shaped, we can route over there, which works fine. And then next Monday I will finish off The Hound of the Baskervilles. Just come round far quicker than I expected. Maybe Twitch will behave itself if it has YouTube as competition. Yes, I'm threatening it into submission. If I can live stream to YouTube, though, that's going to make archiving a lot easier. Take a step out. So, thank you very much. Thank you for supporting the channel and helping keep the lights on, quite literally. And I will see some of you on Thursday and some of you on Monday. I'm not doing a game stream on Twitch this evening. However, in a little while I'm going to drop into Discord and I will do a Discord stream, probably with a bit less talking, and I'm not sure what game. It'll be a game. It'll be something. But if any of you are around, you're more than welcome to drop in and join me in the Discord streaming channel. So I will catch you there in a bit. Thank you very much, and good night.